Fox News just confirmed that Paul Ryan is going to be delivering the Republican response to the State of the Union address by the president. This news just breaking moments ago.
A perfect choice. Republican Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin. Not only is Paul Ryan a young, articulate, rising star in the Republican Party, but he is the perfect embodiment of the Republican message of fiscal discipline. The image the Republican Party wants to project right now is a pure ideological commitment to the sacred principles of reduced spending and smaller government. When you distill down the essence of the newly ascended, reincarnated, Tea Party-infused Republican Party, that's essentially it at its core. Smaller government, more freedom. Cut spending, get government off your back. Paul Ryan has branded himself as the resident intellectual of this GOP project.
He's a conservative, highly regarded, very intelligent. I guess they want to stress that he's their go-to guy when it comes to perhaps slashing the budget, creating jobs.
Republicans say it chose Ryan as a way to show the party's commitment to cutting the deficit.
They say that Paul Ryan will address the nation from the Budget Committee room, where they say the Democrat spending spree will end and Republicans' push for spending cuts will begin.
Okay, so that's the picture that Paul Ryan and the Republican Party want to project. It's what they want you to think of them. And it's one that we're tempted to have. You know, say what you want about them, I not agree with them, but they do want smaller government. They do want spending cuts. It's tempting to believe that. It really is. But when you look a little closer at Paul Ryan, that picture becomes a little muddy. Paul Ryan's big claim to fame at this point is his roadmap for America's future. This roadmap calls for a number of quite draconian, severe, radical, and drastic spending cuts to the most cherished entitlements in America. Things like a partial privatization of Social Security and a voucher system for Medicare. The weird thing is that at the same time that Paul Ryan was pushing his roadmap, which advocates for essentially dismantling Medicare, the National Republican Party was running campaign ads like this one.
I've been in Washington for only a year.
And what's Bennett done? He voted to gut Medicare, jeopardizing benefits for over 200,000 Colorado seniors.
You see that? On the one hand, dismantle Medicare. But on the other hand, don't touch Medicare. This is a little hard to square, right? I mean, the Republican Party is supposedly the party of cuts to spending and smaller government. Medicare should be target number one. It's a crowning achievement of the welfare state, the last massive piece of truly social democratic legislation passed in this country. Shouldn't Republicans like cuts to Medicare? I mean, why in the world is the Republican Party defending Medicare? Haven't they read Paul Ryan's roadmap? The answer to that question lies a little bit further in Paul Ryan's record. It goes back to 2003 specifically. What did Paul Ryan do in 2003? He and the Republican Party passed a massive expansion of Medicare, a massive expansion that wasn't paid for, that was just larded onto the deficit, that was essentially a massive giveaway to the drug companies. Now, this would seem at first blush to be everything that Paul Ryan is against. Expanding the government, increasing the deficit, getting the government more involved in health care. The Republican Party wasn't forced to do this, remember. They were the driver's seat in 2003. They controlled the White House and both houses of Congress at the time. So what did Paul Ryan do when confronted with this ideological test? How did he vote? He cast the deciding vote for the Medicare expansion. Now, in fairness, it passed the House by just one vote, so every Republican who voted yes cast the deciding vote for it. But why? Why would Republicans pass this massive expansion of government?
The Ardmore Senior Center in suburban Philadelphia.
I-27.
Where Republicans are betting whatever prescription drug plan Congress passes will be a winning issue in next year's election.
Well, they've talked about it more than any of the others that have been. Now, if they get things rolling, I think that's admirable.
It's attitudes like that that have made Republicans optimistic and experts take notice.
Health care in general, prescription drug benefits, it's been a Democratic issue. By seizing that issue, the president thinks, Republicans think, they can get a real advantage.
It didn't matter they were creating a whole new unpaid-for entitlement. Republicans were courting the vote of seniors. The Republican Congress that Paul Ryan was a part of, the Tom DeLay, Gingrich Revolution Congress, they came to town pledging to cut spending, to reduce government. But that's not at all what happened. In fact, spending increased during the Bush years. Look at that. It went up and up every single year. But it was a sort of spending that Republicans like, spending for their constituencies, like the defense industry, or spending for constituencies they were trying to court, like seniors. Go back to the Reagan years. Same thing. Every year, spending went up. Ronald Reagan, the patron saint of fiscal conservatism, grew spending during his time in office, largely on things like defense. So if you look at their record, rather than their rhetoric, you're forced to come to a simple conclusion. Republicans aren't against government spending in general. They're against government spending on things that don't benefit either their own political coalition's interests or the political interests of those whose votes they're actively trying to court. It's not a question of bigger government. It's a question of who benefits from that government. Today, House Republicans unveiled $2.5 trillion in spending cuts they'd like to make over the next 10 years. Look at who the cuts go after. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the Legal Services Corporation, which provides legal aid to the poor, the Community Development Fund, USAID. It's all about taking money away from the constituencies that are marginalized, that have no political power, or that don't support the Republican Party, and rewarding the constituencies that do support them, or who they think might support them in the future. That Paul Ryan roadmap, here's what it does. It raises taxes. That's right, raises taxes only on those Americans making between $20,000 and $200,000 a year, and slashes taxes in half for the wealthiest Americans. It eliminates the taxation of corporate income and replaces it with a consumption tax that hits middle-class Americans the most. It hands a gift to their friends on Wall Street by partially privatizing Social Security. See, this is the way to understand the Republican Party, not as a party that's interested in reducing the deficit or spending cuts or smaller government, but as a political party that is a vehicle for the interests of certain constituencies, a party that will pursue those interests first and foremost above and beyond whatever their supposed ideological interests are. So, if that means $700 billion for the banks when the Republican president and congressional leadership whipped hard for TARP, then it's $700 billion for the banks. If that means a massive unfunded expansion of Medicare to simultaneously benefit drug companies and lure seniors into their political camp, then it's a massive unfunded expansion of Medicare. If that means exempting all military cuts for their friends in the defense industry, then sure, let's spend $13 billion on our Marine fighting vehicle that even the Pentagon doesn't want. The political interests come before ideology every time. Republicans have this narrative they want you to believe, that they're the party of small government and reduced spending. That's why they're putting out Paul Ryan to give their official response to President Obama on Tuesday. He embodies that message for them. But when you look at what they've actually done in power, they in no way deserve that reputation. The only way to understand the Republican Party right now is to view it through this lens, to cast aside this false perception out there that Republicans are bound by some sort of ideological commitment to smaller government and cutting spending. They're not. They haven't been in the past. And despite what you may hear from Paul Ryan on Tuesday night, they won't be in the future.